So in true Jeremy Clarkson style, I looked on the internet and I saw this. Well, hello and welcome back to what is episode 5 already of the £100 layout. And I'm looking at things slightly from a different angle at this moment in time. Planning is a big part of what happens next. And there were some great suggestions again in the comments section. I won't go through them all this time. They're all there if you want to take a look. But there were a few things that came up time and time again, so they're well worth me taking a look at. What you're looking at right now is a photograph of the palette from above, and I've dropped it into PowerPoint. Reason for that is that I quite like the drawing tools in PowerPoint that allow me to freehand scribble on here and do some planning. So that's kind of what I'm looking at this moment in time. But the picture you see, you may notice one or two differences compared to where things were last time. The main thing is the gap that was 6 and 7, so 6 and 7 there, has now been filled, and that's because the palette, what do we call these? Plank that was here, I've moved over to here. Now, there's a reason for that. A lot of people were suggesting the idea of having a canal or a stream running down in that gap, and I quite like that idea, but I just couldn't make it make sense with the way the layout went, because you would have ended up with only a small amount of canal or stream that was actually visible before it disappeared under a bridge that then would have been far too big, and it didn't really make sense. So what I thought was, actually, let's move that over here so we can make it make sense a bit more, and also have it down on a level with, you remember we said there was going to be a roadway that would come here, slope down and go underneath the layout. Well, that's going to be there, which means that there will be a lower level here, if you will, for there to be a canal or stream coming down here that makes more sense. I hope you're staying with me so far. But essentially, canal or river or stream, and it may be more of a stream, I think, but I'm not sure. I'll play around with that idea today. That will run along here, bridge here, in the same way that this will be a road that slopes down underneath a bridge here. So that will probably be one width of bridge there, if that makes sense. And I think that adds quite a nice variety to it, brings some water into things as well, and it means I can play around with some of the water ideas that you guys have thrown around as well. What it does mean is that maybe I don't have water over in this section anymore, and maybe something else happens there. I don't know, or there may still be some kind of pond or lake in that recess there. Either way, we're now at a point of really thinking about what is going to go where on this layout. We've got the siding, we've got the main loop. I think we're now pretty set on there being some kind of waterway here, there being bridges here, and definitely there. So there are the bridges, got the track over the top. it's really, I think, the interest comes from what do I do with this siding here? So I did a bit of looking around online, and there's more research to do and ideas to be found. But this siding, in terms of industry, there were a couple of suggestions for things pottery related, especially given my proximity to Stoke-on-Trent and the potteries, and I quite like that as an idea. So I'm going to do some further research on that idea, especially using one of the orange cone type things as a kiln tower. Really quite like that idea. They don't quite have the right shape, but I think a bit of artistic license can be given for an item that is free. So yeah. But also I was looking at sort of rural industrial sidings. And this, I don't know the credit of what ModelRailway this is from, but it's beautiful, whoever's done it. I saw this picture here, and I was particularly intrigued by this sort of bedraggled shack structure that sits over the rails, and I might quite like to replicate something like that to sit over the end of the siding. But also I was looking at so this picture is quite an old picture, as you can tell from that guy's moustache, of the sidings by the Dilhorn Colliery, which is on the Foxfield Railway, which is very local to me, and Dilhorn is very, very local. Elements of this still exist, and I think they do some tours around what's left of the colliery. But I was just interested in, is there anything from this kind of scene that I could incorporate as well? And maybe I was looking at this small brick building here, whether that might make sense to have something like that alongside the bedraggled shack that we just spoke about. So I'm just starting to gather ideas of what could go there. But essentially I see a vision where, if I just put it back into drawing mode, and maybe I choose a different colour, I see a vision where there is some kind of building over the end of the siding, and an accompanying smaller building here as well. It seems to be trying to change the shapes for me and things, which is fine. It's neatening things up, so it could be something like that. And if we do go with some kind of pottery industry, then maybe a kiln here or something like that might work quite well. So I think my next bit of research is, were there any sort of pottery type sidings? This is where my lack of knowledge comes in, so anyone who knows me or has seen any of my past stuff, I like scenery. I'm not an expert on railway history or anything like that, so I need to do some research, but thank goodness for the internet, hey? Well, whilst Computer Adam carries on doing some research, which is just an excuse to browse the internet, really, isn't it? This Adam, also the same guy, is over at the board itself. And that's because I'm now becoming pretty certain what's going to happen with this area here. So you saw it in the photograph earlier, but I've moved this plank here from here to create a larger space here. I filled this gap in here so that we've got rigidity there to put the track down on, and I've put a couple of filler pieces in there as well to provide some support at the back. This space here, as you might remember from the
the screen that I was showing you a minute ago will have a road that comes down here, and then I have decided it's going to be a canal down through here. So it'll be a canal that obviously sits down at a lower level so that it can pass under the bridges at either end. And then I started to look at actually making sure that it can all fit in here. So you'll have to excuse my rather crude drawing. But I started to gather some measurements of what sort of standard widths a canal is in the UK. I'm not sure that made entire sense, that sentence, but I think you know what I'm getting at. So basically I wanted to make sure that I could fit a full width canal in there and make sure it looks to scale and looks right. And this is one of the places where I've really struggled for the first time with doing N-gauge, because every time I measure something out or draw something out, I think that's tiny, that's not big enough. But of course, I'm just so used to doing 00 in the past that the N everything seems tiny. But let me just explain. So from this here, I took standard bridge heights or minimum bridge heights for the UK there, and then I used a website. I forget it off the top of my head, but I'm putting the picture of it and the link of it on the screen right now, that allows you to enter a real world dimension and hit calculate, and it gives you the scale equivalents, which is great. So 31 millimeters there or thereabouts is the sort of minimum road bridge height. I then added 10 mil depth for the canal. Obviously a canal would be a lot deeper than that, but there's no point in making it deeper for a model. I really just need to be able to put a couple of layers in there, and I'll add paint in to add the look of depth in there. So that then means 41 mil from top to the underside of the bridge itself. And then I looked at sort of canal widths, and there isn't like a standard width, but it needed to be wide enough that it looked realistic. So I ended up at 92.6 millimeters in width, and then there'll be bridge pillars here and here. So that's kind of like what I needed to do. I then took some cardboard and cut it to the size that drops down in here, and then took a ruler and a pen and marked it out, and that's what we've got here. So hopefully you can see that well enough, but this piece here will drop down into there, and it may not be on that piece exactly in the end, but that will drop down into there, and that shows me where the brick pillars will go, the bridge sides across the top, and then there'll be a little build up there for a roadway that passes under the bridge, which is this one that slopes down here, and then this will be the canal here. So that's the idea, that's where we're going. So I then need to create the whole sort of cardboard enclosure that drops down into here. The idea being that what I want to do is effectively construct that so it's a drop in, drop out module, so that I can work on that individually without it needing to be on the layout as such, and then when ready I can just drop the whole thing down and in. So that's one thing, and then obviously we've talked about the industrial buildings sort of here, and for those of you that when I talked about the cooling tower didn't know what I meant, this is what I mean. Obviously it would have to be cut down. That's way too big for N-gauge. In fact, let me just move the camera because you can't see that. There we go. So something like that, but trimmed to the correct size. So probably more as a bottle kiln than a cooling tower. And if I wanted to, I could even go with two of them, because I have got two of them, and I might do. But yeah, so I'm doing some more research into sidings and things like that. But and here's where I'm going to get on my soapbox for a minute. I had this conversation with the guys from the Model Rail Replacement podcast this week, which I'll be on next week, talking about things including this project. And one of the things that I talked about was Rule 1. I'm a big believer in Rule 1, and for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, essentially it's your layout. You can run what you want on it, but I also talked about what I call Rule 1 Plus, which is it's your layout. You can build it however you want, you can imagine it however you want, and if anyone's got a problem with it, then tough, it's your layout. If you set your stall out and say, look, I want to build a prototypical layout, then yeah, expect people to come up with thoughts and ideas and criticisms when it's not. But if you're saying, look, I just want to build something and I want to use my imagination and I just want to do something for myself, then do that. This is a creative hobby. Just go for it. Do what you want, and make it your own. So that's what I would say, and there's going to be an element of that in this layout, that's for sure.
So now I think we're pretty clear on this being like a lift out section that'll be a slope down road and a canal that runs underneath. I'm pretty happy with that, and exactly how that will work. That'll then lead into probably a quite sort of rough ground area up here, a couple of buildings here as the industrial area, and probably continue it on around this side of the siding as well, and then maybe sort of fence it off somewhere along the line. I think out here there's going to be a sort of generic greenery area, so grassy embankment / hill going up the side there. I guess possibly similar here as well, just to kind of don't know why it did that, just to kind of make it fit in quite nicely. Everything down the front end will need to be that little bit flatter so that you can see into the layout from the front. But I think if we're going with sort of greenery around the back here that slopes up into a hill area, and then if I just change this brush color again, like I say, this kind of rough ground storage area for the industrial part, obviously with the road coming into it. I hope that's making sense. And then for it to be sort of fenced off here, that I think is what we're looking at there. And then it very much leaves some open questions here. I know there was a suggestion of, could there be like a quarry area there, or a lake for some more water, or something like that. I quite like the idea of a disused quarry area. That might fit in quite well with the kind of pottery industry, if maybe they're digging out clay or whatever. I don't know, I'm not an expert in that side of things, but what I have been thinking is that because the structure and rigidity is provided by the boards that sit under here and under here, I could actually cut this section out here and turn this into another drop down section that lifts out, like I'm doing here, for this to become a quarry. So actually, I think that makes some sense, ties in quite nicely. So what about I cut that out there and turn this area into a disused quarry? I think we're getting somewhere, you know.
Okay, so like I've said, I feel like I'm getting somewhere with this as a plan, and it's starting to make a bit of sense, and sort of tie it all together. And that's one of the unique challenges of building a model railway layout, right? Is getting things to come together in a way that makes sense rather than just bits thrown together. So with the board sort of cleared off a bit there, I'm just gonna have a little map out of that actually on the boards here. So I think we talked about this far end here having like a grassy embankment area that I think would run all the way to here. So that kind of whole area over the back to become a grassy embankment area. So I need to build that up with something. So I'll probably put some cardboard into the corner that slopes down, and then build it up with some screwed up newspaper or something like that, and then plaster cloth over the top to build that. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, I don't know if this section is quite on camera, but to do similar in this corner here, just to kind of finish it off. Then we talked about the industrial area. So we know that the road will slope up here and then come across here into this kind of open area, and there'll be some sort of building here, a kiln type building there, and then possibly some kind of shack over the end of the line there. We can come back to that and revisit it at some point as things progress. And then be some general detritus, if you will, in this area. I do love that word. And then probably some kind of fencing off here to kind of separate it from this section. And this section, we talked about maybe a quarry. Thank you for the idea. I've seen it from a couple of people. Forgive me for not having your names to hand, but thank you very much for the input and ideas. It is greatly appreciated. Then dawned on me that what I want is like a bowl shape to sink down in there, right? And then I remembered, bear with me, then I remembered I've got these that might actually make quite a nice basis for the structure. So I'm thinking about just sinking that down into the structure. So if I cut out a little bit from this board here with a jigsaw, slot that down in, and then I can use plaster cloth to bond it together and to go down into the quarried area. And I think that might work quite nicely. I can then sort of landscape up a little bit off the sides and just make it so it doesn't look like a bomb crater in a flat field somewhere. And I can do all of that with plaster cloth as well. And then that leaves the question of kind of this front corner, which you can't quite see on camera at the minute, and this far corner here. They will likely be grassy field areas. This one here may even have like a sign in the front corner. I'm talking about down here in this front corner, like a sign in there about the layout itself or something like that. What I then need to figure out, so I'm quite happy with that up here. What I then need to figure out is about laying the track. And I'm in two minds whether to actually lay it directly on the board or whether to lay it on plaster cloth. What I think is I might do something in between and maybe get some cheap filler and create a smooth and flat track bed that I can place the track directly on. And then Jonathan at Train Tracks and JS Models, for that matter, has suggested, kind of, I think he called it an MS polymer, sort of no more nails or sticks like kind of product that I could then put on top of that to actually fix the track down and in place. So it kind of then gets to the point of saying, okay, well, what is the first step? And I think, as always, the first step is to work from the back to the front. So I think it's going to be building up these corners with the plaster cloth at least, and creating that kind of shape, and then cutting out the hole for that to drop down into, and thinking about how that area is shaped. The goal, therefore, is that by this time next week, there is plaster cloth down on at least parts of the layout, and it actually starts to come to life a little bit more. Now, I know this has been another kind of talking and planning episode, and I promise you I will actually get on with some stuff soon, but it's so important to get this stuff planned out in the first place. Without planning it, then things can go wrong pretty quickly. So I think what I will do before the end of this video is just cut out this slot here, and sink that down into the gap. Let's get the jigsaw. So there we are, that's that now dropping down in place. Yes, there's a ridge up to it, but that's fine because I want to build up some edge to it anyway, so I'm not too bothered about that at all. And then I can do all sorts in here with the plaster cloth to make it look more like a disused quarry. So again, I'll need to do some research and dig out some pictures to see exactly what I want it to look like, but that was quite easy just to cut that piece out. I do need to secure these ends a little better now. Now that they've had the middle taken out, they need a little bit more support to stay in place, but that I think works quite nicely, and once it's then plaster clothed in place, it will then fit and work even better. So my next step is going to be to use the cardboard to build up these embankment areas. So if I build up the like the cardboard into the corner first, by cutting it and just making it into a frame, if you will, then once I've done that, I can then stuff that frame with, like I say, screwed up newspaper or whatever, something like that. I always, when I'm doing plaster cloth, I always use a light material underneath, because otherwise you're just adding unnecessary weight to the layout. He says that having built it on an extremely heavy pallet anyway. But if I use that cardboard into the corner and across the back, build up the embankment, then yeah, I should actually be able to get that plaster clothed and done by this time next week. So by the time you come back next week, there will actually be some white on here for you to look at. That's the plan anyway. Let me know what you think so far. I'm sure some of you will think that there are different things I could be doing. Some of you will like the direction we're going in. Either way, love to hear your comments, so please let me know. And I'd really appreciate it. We're literally just starting to build this channel now. It's been going a few years, but sort of this series has kick-started things. But we are a small independent business as well. I keep saying we, so go take a look at rail-stuff.com, pick up some bits as and when you need them. We'll be at Buxton Show this weekend with the stand as well, so come and say hello. And also, if you have a chance to like and subscribe, then please feel free to do so. It doesn't cost anything, and you can always change your mind later. So with that, thank you very much, and I will see you next week.